Yeah, we're back. We're live. It's Given Thursday. It's Think Tech. I'm Jay Fidell. It's America Finding Its Way. Title of our discussion today with Tim Apicella, Winston Welch, and Cynthia Sinclair is it's also the mess Trump left behind. And this show could be a 5-hour mess discussion of the mess. However, before we start, I want to talk about CPAC. Tim, what is CPAC?
Well, it's a conservative forum. I forget what the acronym CPAC stands for. Crazy Republican, I can't remember. The bottom line is it's been going on for years. It's a conservative forum for people to discuss platform ideas and right-wing conspiracies, as far as I'm concerned. I believe the originator of that, or the guy that puts it on, is Matt Schlepp. And I was listening to his interview the other day, and the question came up, are you going to give Donald Trump a microphone? And the answer was yes. And he wouldn't admit that he admitted that Joe Biden was the new president, but he could not, and he would not admit that he was going to deviate from Donald Trump's big lie that the election was stolen from him. So they're still on that. They're not going to veer off that path of the big lie.
So what does this mean that Donald Trump is selected to speak on Sunday? He's going to give some kind of, big speech on Sunday. What does it mean that CPAC is so completely with him? I don't know if anybody else is going to show up. Yesterday I was saying, well, maybe, some of the more moderate Republicans will be there, but I'm not so sure, because this seems to be heading right down the conservative path, or worse.
I don't know, Jay, it just seems it's a little early for 2024, but that's what CPAC's kind of starting to turn into, is the forum of who is your likely candidates for the 24 presidential election. And it's the first test out of the gate to see what ideas or what popularity a candidate may have, and kind of just boast about it on a microphone. So that's a good question.
Well, I'm sure we're getting a lot of news about it. Winston, should we cover that or just forget it, turn our backs on it?
It seems like it's just a never-ending campaign cycle now for everybody who's ever running. I mean, it's the day after the election, I started getting things. We need to prepare for 2022. And okay, can we have like a month, 2 months? Could we have 6 months or a year off and just agree that we can talk about these things at some other time or some other way? Everybody's so exhausted right now that we just need a break. I don't care what Donald Trump has to say at CPAC or anything else. It's not going to change anything that he has to say or his followers or what they're listening to him. However, it'll be interesting to see who they do invite there as the continued issues with the Republican Party play out. I'm not sure where this will all end up. So I'm with Tim. It's kind of early, maybe irrelevant. Let's come back at it later. We have so many other issues to deal with that giving this man oxygen is, we don't need to be doing that.
Okay, let's go to our principal discussion here. I'm good with that. Cynthia, our principal discussion is the mess that Trump left behind, which we're only learning about now. And unfortunately, it's undermining Biden. One that was covered yesterday, I guess it was Rachel Maddow, was the lack of any transition. Remember, he just left the White House. He did not cooperate in any way, and he discouraged his officials from cooperating. Really awful. What's the effect of that? Do we know the effect yet?
Well, I think that Biden would have been able to be even more productive than he has been. And he has been very productive. So I think that the motivation to not give him any kind of transition help was to undermine his effectiveness. But I'm not sure it's really successful, because he seems to be doing so much. He's celebrating today 50 million vaccines administered under his administration. That's a pretty big step. And it's only been, a month? It hasn't even been very long, a little over a month. So I think he's doing really well. I'm sure that it is, in the overall picture, going to slow things down, of course, And just to tag on to that last subject we were on really quick, they did invite Mike Pence to come and speak, but he declined.
He was probably concerned for his own safety.
Absolutely.
As I said yesterday, there are going to be a lot of Trumpers there and maybe right wing there.
Yeah.
So Tim,
Hey,
let's
Jay,
go. Yes.
Hey, I just want to clarify something. CPAC does not stand for crazy Republican, blah, blah, blah. It stands for Conservative Political Action Conference.
Well, that's true, but it also represents a fair part of the Republican Party. And I think that history has swept a lot of Republicans into CPAC. So we're going to see a lot of familiar Republican, right-wing Republican faces there. And that takes me.
I did say I was going to retract on my crazy Republican, because if they're following Donald Trump, that means they're following the big lie and all the conspiracies that go with it. So I'm still not, I can't retract what I said about crazy Republicans.
All right. Understood. Now let's talk about the Congress, about the crazy Republicans in the Congress, the ones who, after the insurrection, voted to overturn the Electoral College. Those, and anyway, right now, you would think that with all this talk about conciliation coming from the new Biden White House, there would be some measure of conciliation, and there was in the impeachment by a handful. Bottom line, though, is that most of the Republicans are marching in Trump step, and I just wonder if you could help us understand whether he is ever going to have real conciliation here, because so far there is none. No.
I'm at the point now, Jay, where unfortunately I think we're past the truth, we're past facts. And now it's blind allegiance to a failed leader. And that is the modus operandi of the Republican Party right now. And that is, if you're going to follow Donald Trump, you better get on board with the big lie, and don't you dare step outside of those boundaries. And I think it's time for Steve Schmidt or whoever to form a new party. It's too bad they can't reclaim their rightful place in the GOP, but I think it's gone. And I find that really unfortunate. I used to be a Republican, and I'm sorry to see the party slip away. But that's
what's happening, and I wonder if you can help us understand it. Is on the one hand, you have Trump, who's asking them to, provide him total loyalty, and many of them are. On the other hand, you have Mitch McConnell, who's still the minority leader there, and who said that Trump was wrong and Trump violated. Trump created the insurrection, whatnot, although he voted to acquit him. And now McConnell, this is really disturbing. McConnell says the Republicans are unified under him in opposing anything that the Biden White House wants to do. So you have two Republican groups there. Obviously, they're not in accord, but they have one wonderful thing in common. They both oppose whatever the White House wants to do. Where's that going?
Good question, Jay. Again, it's how many times have we seen Republicans veer off the path only to come back and kiss the ring of Donald Trump? Donald Trump is a very forgiving person, actually, if you think about it, because sometimes along the way in the last 4 years, many Republicans have said some, pretty harsh criticisms of Donald Trump, but as long as they get on their knees and kiss the ring, Donald Trump always seems to take them back in. And I think that will be the case for Mitch McConnell, and certainly was Lindsey Graham. I remember the day of the insurrection, the day after, he says, "I'm done with this. I've seen enough." Well, it wasn't more than 3 days after that Lindsey Graham was fully back on board.
Yeah, the telephone calls.
Well, yeah, the telephone calls. Good point. So I don't think I have a real answer to your question, and I'm sorry for that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm in the same place. Winston, we have the COVID relief bill coming on for a vote today, and depending on what the parliamentarian says, I guess it's all up to her. We may or may not have the $15 minimum wage in there. But what's troubling about it is that this is going to be in lockstep too. This is going to be strictly on party lines, and everybody takes the position that their party takes. There is no flexibility at all. Are we going to get the COVID relief bill? Are we going to get the minimum wage? Why don't you give us a prediction here?
I don't know. I mean, you know, you have the Equality Act coming up as well. And this is a basic thing that should have been passed decades ago. As you know, there was a popular thing going around YouTube about Marjorie Taylor Greene and her coworker across the hall putting up various signs towards each other. You know, it's hard to say what is going on. I think the Republicans right now, they just don't know what they're doing. And so they're trying to err on the side of safe. And whereas, I don't know, I would say that they're crazy. I think they're probably pretty rational because they're afraid more than crazy. Because again, when you go back to that vote that they had about Liz Cheney being in leadership, it was a secret vote, and it was about 75% of the Republicans voted to keep her in her leadership position. The thing that they were voting on, the topic was that she said Donald Trump had carried out the most egregious violation of the president ever. And that's what they were voting on. Now, when they came out and they voted, when they were voting on the actual impeachment, it was what, 45-5 or whatever it was. So when their names are being reported, it's a different story than when they're hiding behind something. And you know, yesterday I made a rather glib remark, which is not useful in the conversation, but they come out sometimes. We're humans, where it says Americans are shallow people. When I'm saying that, I'm saying some of us, including myself, are shallow at certain times and easily duped, easily distracted by the shiny thing. And it's true of me. It's true of most of us, and especially with our not 24-hour news cycle, 24-minute news cycle, if even that. It's easy to generalize about entire groups of people, but I think it's, you know, essentially I'm getting to the point now where I'm trying to understand beyond everything else, how do we come back together? How do we, you know, Joe Biden talks about unity and all that. Are there actually substantive issues that are actual real issues that are not based in racism, sexism, homophobia, those sorts of things that we can agree upon, that we're actually looking across and saying, where did we stop talking to each other and why? And you know, it's easy to blame it on Donald Trump, but he's not the only fellow out there.
You know what it looks like, Winston? If it's your idea, even if it's good, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
I vote against any idea. This is puerile. It's puerile. But Cynthia,
Yes,
I want to ask you about two things. You know, one is, Sanders said yesterday that if the minimum wage, $15 minimum wage came for a floor vote, there's no way, he was very clear about this, there's no way it would pass on the floor. I said, really? I mean, you know, there are a lot of good points for it. How about, you know, and remember that, you know, in the Senate, you have what, 50 votes that are Democrat. No way, he said, no way it would do it. Furthermore, you know, a lot of people have said, if you want to knock off the filibuster, which stands in the way of so much good legislation, there's no way that could happen. No way. And I made a list of other things too. But to follow on Winston's point, we have a legislature, especially the Senate, that's completely dysfunctional because they don't care about the value of the bill. They don't care about the interests of the electorate. They don't care about the interests of the country. Is this sustainable as a democracy?
Well, it may just happen whether it's sustainable or not. It seems that the only thing politicians care about these days is getting reelected. And that's what really bothers me. It's like Winston was just saying, can we have a month? Can we have a couple months where it's not an election series? You know, it seems like every politician that we talk to anyway, all they care about and all they think about is their reelection campaign, as opposed to working on the issues and the things that are involved in actually making our country run. We've got Senator Mnuchin on the Democratic side, who's going to absolutely sink a bunch of things that President Biden wants to do. And he's, you know, this Democrat, and he's going to get rid of that 50-50. you know, so I don't know what's going to happen. But he's one of the senators that has said he will not vote for the $15. Democrat will not vote for the $15 an hour raise. I don't know why.
You know, it all seems...
I can tell you why.
Yeah, why?
I mean, if you study the minimum wage issue, the $15 barely makes sense in high urban areas where the wage is much greater for people, but the cost of living is higher. But if you go into rural areas, then the $15 is really a lot of money for employers to have to pay. Now, I fully support the $15 per hour wage increase, but you have to understand from their perspective that the cost of living is so much less in rural areas, and $15 for a person who works a basic job is quite a bit of money for them, and quite a bit of money for an employer to pay out. But that is why there is opposition from rural senators. You know that.
Well, not only that, but Jim, we can't even get $12 an hour here in Hawaii, in liberal blue Hawaii, where
thank
by
you.
the way,
Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
200,000 people in this, 200 or 300,000 I saw in the paper yesterday, voted for Donald Trump, and he got 4% or 6% more voted for him in 2020 than 2016. So this is liberal blue Hawaii, where we can't get this done, where about 40% of the people work for minimum wage. And you can do the simple math. You've got to have 3 or 4 full-time jobs to be able to pay the rent here. And so it doesn't cut it here.
And what's the cost of living here?
If we can't do it here, West Virginia, Alabama, you know, for them, that's like $1 million a year.
Guys, did you notice that this morning Costco announced that they were paying $16 an hour across all their stores? $16. I mean, that's a real statement, isn't it? And I would not be surprised if other big retailers and big companies, for that matter, did exactly the same thing. You guys in Congress, you're all stuck. We are going to 15 or 16 or whatever. And good for them. I mean, I personally will never forget.
Well, Seattle, I mean, CPAC did this. It's a city south of Seattle. CPAC did this back in 2012. $15 minimum wage, the first in the country to do it. And the dire predictions that the employers were going to go bust as a result of it did not pan out.
So let's talk about more things that are sort of left on the deck here. Louis DeJoy testifies, arrogant fellow, in front of Congress, gets into an argument with one of the Democrats there, Connolly, I think it was. Bottom line, though, is he's still running the post office. And when you have Louis DeJoy there, and you have the Republican juggernaut with bills all over the country to further suppress voting, it's so obvious they're racist, that the Republicans are alive and well trying to suppress voting for 2022, 2024. They're going to be busy boys the whole time. And Louis DeJoy in the post office, if he gets to remain, he'll be a busy boy. So let's see, whose turn? Cynthia, what do you think about that? What can we do about that? How can we get rid of Louis?
Biden appointed 3 new members to the board, and hopefully they will vote him out. So that's what Biden's trying to do about it anyway, which makes me a little bit encouraged, because when I heard some of the things that DeJoy was saying, I just thought, what? Why? And it's just to undermine democracy. It is what it feels like. Or I should say, undermine anything that is democratic, because he's going to support anything that's Republican.
Yeah,
and
well,
somebody that's partisan dealing with my post office.
Let me move to this.
Why don't they? You know who comes to my house every day besides the postman, which I do love, a functioning, excellent post office, and I would refer the observer of our show, the watcher, the avid watcher, to The Postman with Kevin Costner. If you haven't seen it, it's a classic from the 90s where society collapses and the postman represents civilization again, where they restart.
I remember that movie, yeah.
Watch it again, folks. But if we can't get the post office to function, and I know that the goal has been to destroy the post office for many years, well, we do all we can to shore that up, but we deputize Amazon to collect the mail and stamp the mail for elections or whatever else we need them to, because they're coming up and down every single street too. Or maybe we have Amazon put in a box at the corner of every street, and they can pay someone to keep the box on their property. I don't know, but there's ways we can get this mail done.
But remember that Congress is going to have to agree with that, because that's a different system. Speaking of Congress, I would like to talk about revisionism for a minute, Tim. So there, you know, well, it seems so clear when the insurrection was on the television, and you know, and hundreds of millions of people around the world were fixed to it, seeing with their own eyes what was going on. Now we're having a revisionist history. The Republicans are creating false narratives about who was there, who was responsible. You know, that it was other organizations come in, and it wasn't the Republicans or the Trumps, the people that did it. Really, totally big lie, falsehoods. And I imagine that the press, you know, tries to keep it straight, but people are very confused. We had, you know, a lot of news about how many people were arrested with the DOJ investigations, FBI arrests around the country, but the process of that is not being really made public. So we don't know. And we don't have a sense of, you know, they're being caught, they're being prosecuted, they're being tried, they're being jailed. We don't have a sense of that. It's sort of like faded into history with the news cycle. And finally, we have this commission that Nancy Pelosi was talking about, a truth commission to investigate it all. And of course, the Republicans would oppose that. They don't want the truth here. They want the big lie, both about the election and about January 6th. So what's happening, see if you agree with me, what's happening is we're falling into a kind of revisionist view of what happened on January 6th. We're losing the primacy of it, the immediacy of it, and we're losing the truth of it. And yes, it'll go down in history, but it'll be a confused event rather than as clear as it was on January 6th. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I'm going to borrow from Steve Schmidt and I think Michael Steele, and I'll use the word cowardly, and that's how everyone's behaving. But again, if I can take the message and twist it and repeat it over and over as you do with good propaganda, it doesn't matter what the facts are. It doesn't matter what the truth of the moment of history took place. It's how I spin it and how it gets spun forever in history. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to spin the obvious that this was an insurrection. And many people in the followers of Trump were a big part of that. And let's spin that. Let's just pretend it didn't happen. Remember, days after, let's move along in the name of reconciliation between the Democrats and the GOP. Let's move along. Nothing to see here. Well, there is a lot to see here, and we're hearing more and more each day. More truth is coming out. And again, they can't deal with the truth because they look guilty. So we have to spin it. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they will not relent from that spin.
Another big lie. Winston, you had a comment about who was there.
It's their truth. That's what we have to understand. That is their truth. They demonizing, you know, the thing is they're getting a completely different message than we're getting. It's amazing how absolutely, but you know, you can look at two things. It's like those pictures. Do you see the old lady or do you see the cat? You know, and it depends on who you're seeing. When they say, what cat? What old lady? You know,
Young
it's kind of like
girl
that.
with a hat.
The French girl with the hat, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, and it's where two people, and I think a lot of the times we have to say these, there was an article in our Civil Beat, Honolulu Civil Beat, for those of you who aren't here, Neil Milner, think Capitol rioters were on the fringe, think again. And this was in today's Civil Beat. It says close to half the people arrested at the Capitol on the 6th of January either own businesses or are white collar workers, including CEOs, shop owners, doctors, lawyers, IT specialists, and accountants. One's a portfolio manager at a bank. Another owns a hair and nail salon. Close to 90% are employed. Only 10% arrested so far were members of militias or other far-right groups. It says your neighborhood insurrectionist is also less supportive of QAnon than the country as a whole. So it says these normal neighborhood insurgents are not then marginalized, uneducated roughnecks venting their frustration at a system that has screwed them over, which is closer to the usual violent far-right profile and probably the ones you picture when you think of political violence. These are your neighbors, your friends, your nail lady, who are holding these views. And so how do we reach this? Going back to that point is, how do we establish a common framework of speaking the same language and having the same access to the same, I don't know how we do it, because we could still read something that's obviously there and come to very different conclusions, because we have these tribal politics that we fall back into, and it's not helpful. I don't know what the answer is, honestly, but dialogue, maybe we got to expand the show and get people who are voted for Donald Trump on here to figure out what is actually going on in your head that you're really, really concerned about.
Thank you for that suggestion. I mean, thank you for that suggestion. Anyway,
yes.
Let's go to Cynthia. Cynthia, you know, one of the things, one of our primary title here is the mess that Trump left behind. So there's obvious things, you know, in his legacy. I mean, he wrecked the environment, he wrecked international relations, he wrecked our relations with so many countries and allies and all that. I mean, just terrible. But those things were known. There's a lot of other things that are sort of under the hood, things that where he did things that we're only going to find out now. And, you know, and Biden is finding them out little by little, and it's probably really horrible for him. And he doesn't complain about it, but I'm sure that he's having a bad time finding all the little sabotage points that Trump put into things. One of them came out yesterday in the news about Khashoggi, the Khashoggi report, which I find very interesting, and the relationship of Stephen Mnuchin to Saudi Arabia. It's extraordinary that we look back, as for so many other things, we look back and we see that Trump was lying to us, that Trump was violating every norm you could think of, and now we find out that his relationship through Mnuchin and through Jared Kushner were really filthy. And we find out that his reaction to MBS and the Khashoggi killing was really filthy. Can you talk about it? You know, we didn't know this at the time, but it's being revealed now. What does it mean?
I think many of us did know it at the time. I think they weren't allowed to call it factual yet because there wasn't quite enough proof yet, and we didn't have the report in our hands. But I think by their very behavior, they showed their guilt in the whole thing just by saying, no, automatically saying, nope, didn't happen. Or if it did, oh, no, it's okay. Really giving it no time, no import, and no nothing to it. That alone spoke volumes to me. That he didn't want no part of it, really, is I think, because he knew that it was going to fall back on him. You know, we are lied to so often. And to me, that is the number one horrible thing that Trump has left behind in his wake. And that is our inability to trust ourselves, to trust the media, to trust the truth. We don't even know if the truth is the truth anymore, because after all, it could be alternative facts, right? I mean, all that stuff.
I may never feel the same way about the woman who does my nails.
If she's smart, she just sticks to your nails.
Yeah, right. Thank you for that, Winston. Okay, Tim, you know, one thing that's very interesting, we touched on this before, is it remarkable, is it not, that we have two conservative movements swelling up against two governors who faced Trump down during his term. And, you know, at first, in fact, now even, that the press is reacting as if these were legitimate movements, but they're both conservative. And coincidentally, they're both against governors who disagreed with him and attacked him. You know, one is Cuomo in New York, and the other is Gavin Newsom in California. Newsom is under a recall petition, and a lot of people are signing it, conservative people. And Cuomo is under attack, and most recently, it's got the sexual abuse element to it. That's interesting, coming from the Trump team. And so, you know, what we have here is a kind of underground attack on two anti-Trump figures. What does this mean what does it mean in terms of the way, you know, the conservative movement, the Trump movement works? What does it mean in terms of the good guys and how they can maintain a moral position?
I remove myself up to try to look at this on a more very global situation. It really comes down to this for me. If you're at all or have ever said anything negative about Donald Trump, you are now going to be a target for any kind of criticism. We are, I hate to say it, but we're in a cold civil war. And even though Donald Trump is no longer our president, the civil war continues. And it comes down to Donald Trump and the loyalty to Donald Trump. And anyone who would dare go against Donald Trump as president now is open target. And I guarantee you there'll be plenty of those GOP brave senators that voted for impeachment, the conviction of impeachment. They will be targeted. And all those representatives in the House will be considered targets for 2022. And so it just comes down to Donald Trump and the party he now rules. And through that, all things filter down. And if you look at it that way, that's kind of how it kind of pans out at this point.
Wow. Okay. Final words, Winston, Welch. What are your thoughts? How do you feel? What would you like people to remember from this discussion?
Boy, you know, it's a great question, Jay. Our country's in a moment right now. We've passed the crucible, but we've got some serious, extremely serious moral, educational, legal, financial, health challenges facing us. We need to try and focus on those as best as we can, come together where we can, and move forward. It's hard. We have our work cut out for us. I will not deny it. I'm looking forward to the solutions where people can try and look at the picture and see the cat or the lady, depending, and see both and understand it, even if they want to see the cat more. I don't know, but we have a lot of work cut out for us. We have to figure out how to reach the minds and the hearts of folks that that have been pitted against us, I think falsely, and come together as a nation, because we have these insane challenges and we have to step up to the moment. That's it.
Yeah. Cynthia, your thoughts, and try to include how you think Biden is doing against these challenges.
I think he's doing very well. I think he's keeping himself sort of removed from the fray, so to speak. You know, he's not getting involved in all of it. And he's just doing the job. He's putting his head down and he's staying focused. And I think he's doing very good at that. So my thing that I'd like to say for my last thing is that there's a man named Mr. Caulfield, who is hold on, I got to get his exact title because I don't want to mess it up. He is a digital literacy expert at Washington State University in Vancouver. And he says that right now, more than any other time in history, at any moment, at every moment, there are more people fighting to have the opportunity to lie to you than has ever happened before in history. And he's right. It's not just that there are lies out there and misinformation. People are actually fighting to get the opportunity to lie to you. And when you look at it like that, it kind of takes on a new meaning and a whole new sort of picture for you. But he's come out, Mr. Caulfield has come out with a practice that is only 4 simple principles. First, stop, right? Just stop. When you read something that makes you go, just stop and think about it for a minute. Then investigate the source. Where did it come from? That's number 2. Number 3, find better coverage. Can you find it in other places, or is this the only place you hear it? 4, trace the claims, quotes, and media to the original context. So, and this whole program is called SIFT: stop, investigate, find better coverage, and trace claims. And
Okay, we're going to move on. We're out of time. Good suggestion. Good resource. Tim, and you, I guess I would preface it by saying, gee whiz, you know, we thought in November we'd be better. We thought that Congress would properly react to the insurrection. We thought we'd be somehow out of the woods. We thought that with Biden's inauguration, you know, everything would be under control. But, you know, my last thought, which I offer you as a possibility, is that we're still kind of, we're not really doubling down on this. We don't really understand that it's coming for all of us. Nobody is exempt from these processes. How do you feel about that?
I'm still tied into what Cynthia said. And as a society, if we ignore truth and we ignore facts, we can't agree on anything. And they'll have, by definition, inherent conflict. I'll quote Shakespeare. And as it must follow the night, the day, thou cannot be false to any man. To thine own self be true. Which is to say, when you look in the mirror and you know you accept a lie, but you accept it because you want to retain power, and you know you throw the truth in the garbage can, what's that say about you as a human being? And I think we're at that point where we have to self-examine one another and ourselves and say, for the common good of the democracy in this country, for God's sake, let's look at the truth and let's accept that which we can accept as the truth, and then come together and work out our policies and procedures to make this country great again.
Complacency is not an option. Tim Apicella, Cynthia, Sinclair, Winston, Welch, thank you so much. See you guys next week. Aloha.
Thank you.